The this session that I'm going to talk about for us today for a few minutes is called the three ways that our souls operate. The three ways that our souls operate. Let me give you the background behind this session. I'd been wondering over COVID and then starting to, with the national team, lead this group and the challenges of church and the group, and just having recently turned 40 just last year. Easy. I wondered to myself, I began to have a sneaking suspicion that my emotional bandwidth wasn't what it needed to be. So, have you ever wondered if you need more emotional bandwidth? Like this calling, this thing that we do requires more emotionally of you than what you have. Ever felt like that? Don't look at me with judgy eyes. So today, I want to offer you a model that was given to me. I want to offer it to you as it was given and presented to me. I want to offer you this model that will help you increase your emotional resilience as a leader and give your emotion to the right people. So I went to go and see a great blessing in our lives, a guy called Dr. Mark Stonestreet. He's up in Johannesburg. He's a clinical psychologist. He sees half of the church world in Joburg. And in fact, Kenz and I have been saying we deserve lead commission from all the people we've referred to him. But he's an incredibly wise, incredibly devoted follower of Jesus. And he just happens to be a clinical psychologist with profound levels of wisdom and insight into particularly how we as church leaders are wired. I went to him and I said, I have the sneaking suspicion that I don't have the emotional bandwidth that I need for this job. And is there a way I can increase my emotional bandwidth? He said to me, do you want the good news or the bad news? I said, I'd like the bad news. He says, the bad news is you can't increase your emotional bandwidth. What God has given you, you have. That's it. The good news is you can deploy your emotional bandwidth more effectively. You can deploy your emotional resources more effectively. And he proceeded to give me a diagram, which I'm going to give to you, and I hope that it'll be helpful for you. It really centers around Proverbs 4:23, which we all know, guarding our heart above all else, and it does determine the course of our lives. Our heart being, in the Hebrew understanding, really our soul, the seat of our understanding, our mind, our will, and our emotions. He gave me a diagram which I'm going to offer you now. The diagram is 3 concentric circles. In the first circle, the innermost circle, you'll see there it says the 5 closest people. And the wording there that you need to take note of is what we call whole soul engagement. Okay, 5 closest people in your life. These are the 5 closest people in your life. So, if it's not your spouse, just look ahead straight right now. But it's the people to whom you would have the strongest emotional and personal connection, the people that you care about the most. Mark mentioned to me that the number 5 is particularly important. In his view, he doesn't feel like we have an ability as human beings to go much beyond the 5. And the point is that with the 5 closest people to you, so it could be husband, wife, kids, friends, whatever the case is, the goal there is to deploy whole soul engagement. Let me unpack that. You are in their story as they're telling you about their lives, as they're engaging with you, as they're sharing with you, as they are giving you what's going on in their lives. You're in their story and you are imagining what it's like to be them in their story, otherwise known as empathy. Whole soul, we're engaged with our mind, with our will. We're deciding to be engaged with them. We're thinking about what they're saying. We're deciding to stay focused with them. And we are emotionally engaged with them where we are imagining, that's why the word imagination will come up, we are imagining what it's like to be them in their story. So we're in their story and we're imagining what it's like to be them in their story. We are imagining what it's like, what they are feeling, what they're sensing, what's going on in their lives. And that's why imagination is important, because it's the three ways that our souls operate. The first way is through imagination. It's really full deployment of our emotional resources. So I'd get to the end of a day, a taxing day, and I'd come home and Kans would want to engage with me as a husband and wife should engage, and I'd be like, I got nothing left for you. Because X, Y, and Z has sapped that. Whereas it should be the other way around. Are you with me? So, 5 closest people. Jesus had 5 closest. Peter, James, and John, which we know about. Mary and Martha. His 5 closest people. So, that's the innermost 5. The next is a group of 12 to 16 people. It's your next layer of kind of closeness. The next 12 to 16 people. And I'd like to invite you after this to figure out who these various groups of people might be, particularly the first 2 categories, your closest 5 and then the next 12 to 16 people. What we're doing here is we are watching their emotion. We are witnessing their emotion. We are in their story, but we're not them, we're us. Does that make sense? And we are going, how am I feeling about what they are saying? So I'm no longer situating myself in their emotion. I'm no longer imagining what they must be feeling. I'm watching what they're feeling, and I'm in their story. I'm engaged, but I'm me. And I'm kind of making judgment calls about what's going on in their lives, etc., etc. Does that make sense? And I'm asking myself the question, the key question is this: how am I feeling about what they are saying? How am I feeling about their emotion? How am I feeling about what's going on in their world and in their lives? And so we're interacting with their emotions, but we're staying within our emotional zone. Does that make sense? All right. Then the next, so the first way our souls engage is through imagination. The next is interaction. So imagination is that empathy, it's that whole soul engagement, it's everything deployed. I'm them in their story. The next is I am interacting with them. I'm watching their emotion, I'm witnessing their emotion, but I'm remaining me while being in their story. I'm kind of a character in their story. I'm not them in the story. Everybody's clear? Want to make sure I'm okay. Then the third group is the next 40 to 50 people, kind of that you would interact with most frequently. And the goal here, if we to steward and deploy our emotional resources well, is to see them, hear what they're saying, anchor ourselves in our own emotions, and put our emotions on mute. So you're actually not aiming to be too busy with their emotion or even with your own emotion too much. You're staying in business mode a little bit more. Does that make sense? And I realized this when Mark was unpacking, like in a previous life, I was in financial services and colleagues and all that sort of stuff, and we'd engage in business mode. And I'm like, I never felt depleted after a day. Because we were like permanently in business mode. And anytime anybody started to engage deeper, it's like it wasn't the done thing. So just sort of a footsack. You know what I mean? But now you know what it's, we all feel this, don't we? It's like every time anybody talks to us, we're supposed to be fully engaged all the time. And he says you can be fully engaged. I'm going to give you a word that you're not going to be engaged, you're going to be rationalized. There's rationalization going to be taking place. What's happening, guys, is we're going to be staying in a mental, cerebral space, in the rational space. And that's the third way our souls operate. So our souls operate with imagination, this whole soul, empathic, kind of fully deployed, versus we're interacting with their emotions. Now we're not interacting with their emotions. We are simply in rational space. This is when we give wise counsel. This is where we give advice. This is where we simply Listen, we are giving wisdom where it's asked for and invited. We are not deploying ourselves emotionally in their worlds really at all. We're staying in business mode. Our emotions are on mute. Because, he says, and I agree with it, most people that we engage with in this group like to live secondhand Christianity, which is, we must pray for them. We must hear from God for them. We must read scripture for them and tell them what thus saith the Lord for your life. It's called secondhand Christianity. And they are seeking to draw from you, and they can draw from you, they should draw from you, but in the right way. So, it's rationalization space, rational. Now, what ends up happening here, the way we help these people is not through whole soul engagement, the first 5. It's not through interacting with their emotions, the next group. The way we help these people is we are energized. What he means by that is we carry a persona, we carry a presence, we carry the Spirit of God in us, we carry the presence of God and the touch of God on our lives. We carry a resource base within us that they are seeking to try and draw from, and they can, and we allow them to do that. The example he used is the woman with the issue of blood. So it's Mark 5 or Luke 8 or Matthew 9, that same story found in 3 of the Gospels. The woman comes and she touches Jesus, and he is so energized that some of his essence, his being, finds its way to her. So there's a profound difference between the first 2 categories. The first 2 categories, we are giving out. We are like, there's this interaction. We're receiving something importantly from them in the first 2 categories. The third category, we're not receiving anything from them. We're giving to them. You with me? In the first 2 categories, we're receiving their energy. In the last category, we're giving our energy. Does that make sense? Think about Jesus. What did he give? He just gave some of his energy, just gave some of his essence, some of his being, some of the life force, the Spirit of God that was in him. He gave that to her. He didn't receive anything from her. In the first 2, we're receiving people's emotion. In this last one, it flips, and we're giving. We're the ones giving. Does that make sense? What's the point of this? The point is, you and I are going to be engaged with people our whole lives, our entire ministry life. We've got a calling of God on our lives for the whole of our lives, for the long run. We're looking at the long game. We want to be engaged healthily with people years and years and years from now. In order for that to happen, we have to steward our own emotions well. In order to steward our own emotions well, we have to acknowledge we only have a particular bandwidth. Some have bigger bandwidths than others. I'm like an emotional pygmy. So I'm just like a little mini guy, like a little mini me. Okay? So some of you got bigger emotions. Are you with me? So your bandwidth is what you're. So the point, all we're going to do is we're not going to ask God for bigger emotional bandwidth. What we're going to do is we're going to deploy our emotional resources, our God-given emotional bandwidth wisely, and we're going to steward it well. The first 5, that's whole soul engagement. What is it like to be them in their story? That's empathy. That'll nourish and bless the people closest to us. The next group, we're not them in their story, we're in their story. We're interacting with their emotion. We're watching their emotion. We are being present to their emotion. We're reflecting it back to them. That'll bless them appropriately because they're the next group. The last group is the next 40 to 50 people that we would interact with. We're not allowing their emotions to drain us. We're not allowing their emotions to draw resource from us. We are remaining energized, close to Jesus, and they can come and draw from some of that energy, but we are not receiving their negative energy, their negative emotion, their negative stuff. We are giving some of the life force, the Spirit of God that is within us, to them, and they're not draining our emotional resource or draining our emotional tank. And that's effectively the model. 3 ways our souls operate. They operate with whole soul engagement, or you could call it imagination. Secondly, with emotion. and thirdly, with rationalization. Hope that helps you. When Mark gave this to me, I'm like, why didn't somebody tell them 10 years ago? It would have saved me a lot of drama. So I hope I could help you and save you a lot of drama. And I paid Mark for the session, and you don't have to. Okay, there we go.